Okay, so today we are starting the rebuild on my 1990 7.3 IDI. Now for anybody that isn't aware, this was already rebuilt one time. This is my 1990 7.3 IDI that I repainted and did a bunch of work to. Long story short, my first engine rebuild go around, I had a couple things wrong with it. Some valve guides went bad and it was just really wore out and the spit oil everywhere. So we're now on rebuild 2. Now I just got this back from a machine shop in Kalispell by the name of Bradford's. They did a little bit of work to the block. They put new cam bearings in it and they just kind of broke the glaze on my cylinders. These cylinders are already bored 30 over and the 8th cylinder has a sleeve in it. As far as my head work goes, they put new valve guides in it and that was about it for the heads. So yeah, as far as the block goes, they did a little bit. As far as the head goes, they did a little more. They also ground my seats on the heads and they ground down my intake valves. My exhaust valves were too far gone to make any difference. So I'm not too far into this. I kind of just remember to start recording. So here we are. I've got my main bearings on the block side. I apologize for any filming confusions. I'm trying to do this all on my own. So it's not really too easy, but I've got this Lucas assembly lube that I'm going to use on these main bearings. Definitely kind of want clean hands when you do this. Some people use a brush, but I'm kind of scared to use a brush for some obvious reasons, I guess, maybe. Okay, so I just got the crankshaft in here. I'm gonna do a little more like wipe down cleanup on it. I did not polish this crankshaft, but it's still in pretty dang good shape. So obviously wanna make sure you do the best job you can to make sure there's not a bunch of dust or any specks on this for that matter. Obviously the rest you can kind of clean up later, but these main bearings, I mean, this is pretty much it, so. Okay, so I just finished up with the main caps. I don't have them torqued down yet. But you certainly want to make sure that everything spins right. Like every single time you put one of these caps back on, you want to make sure to spin it over, make sure there's nothing harming it, you know, make sure there's nothing that's screeching or scratching or friction keeping it from spinning like it should be. So, okay, so this is the next day and a little bit has gone by since. So here are my piston rings. This is the top ring. This middle ring here, which are these ones, are total seal rings from Justin Anderson at RDIDI. And then this is just the bottom oil ring. He sends out these kits. This is 1, here's 2, and then there's 3. This is the bottom. So I've been getting these pistons cleaned up, mainly using gas. And then I've been putting them in. So far I have got 1, 3, and 2 in. And now it's supper time and I'm done for the night. So, okay, so next day, skipping ahead a little again. Ta-da. Ta-da. So anyway, we got all 8 pistons in here. I just threw the cam in. I don't have it bolted in yet, but it's in. And I was scrolling through my bolt bins looking for my camshaft bolts, and I was reminded that I forgot to put in my oil squirters. AKA oil jets, cooling jets, whatever you want to call them. Basically, they spray oil up into the piston. Now, at first, I was a little concerned, but as it turns out, you can indeed tighten these things back in here without taking the pistons out. That's the oil squirter right there. See where it's bolted on, and then it kind of curves around, squirts up into there. So anyway, basically I took these fellas and then pushed the squirters down in there. Then there's a 1/4-inch bolt that goes in there, which is what this is for. And then I've just been tightening them down. I haven't torqued any of them, but I'm going to find the torque, and if I don't find the torque, I'm just going to tighten them with a 3/8, just a little bit. I don't want to break these, so that would be bad. All right, so now I got valve springs in both heads. This is the driver head. This is the passenger head. I know that because of these studs and then plus this coolant leavage right there. Okay, surprise, it's the next day, or actually no, it's 2 days later. But I got the heads on and now I'm torquing down these ARP head studs. Need to find in my stack of papers. I have the torque sequence in here somewhere. Aha, here we are. Okay, so if anybody's missing the instructions, this is it. So this first step, you torque them down to 65, then you do 85, then 105, and then 25. So you got to torque them 4 times First couple passes, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you just keep kind of starring out from there. Okay, so I got the first set done. They're all 65 foot-pounds. I'm gonna get another torque wrench and just confirm, because this is a good torque wrench, but this is also on the lower side of it. So I'm just gonna make sure. All right, push rods are in. I'm getting these fillers clamped down in here, and then I'll put that little spider thing in here. But right now I'm just kind of getting them cleaned up. Ugh. Okay, so right now I'm underneath of it, figuratively speaking. On the bottom side, getting my oil pump on here. Figure this is a good reminder that the oil pump mounting stud, which is on this main bearing bolt, goes on the driver's side on this third bearing back. For some reason, I had it right here, so of course then I had to pull those, switch them around, re-torque them. These are torqued to 95 foot-pounds. So anyway, don't do what I did. All right, so oil pump is back on there. It's all torqued down and everything. It was only torqued to like 14 foot-pounds. I think I put them to more like 18, so. Now I'm gonna start cleaning up the front and rear main plates so I can get them glued on there. They're right here, kind of filthy. Kind of sad because I just put this rear main back in here. And that front main's only 1,000 miles old, but I guess I have 2 more, so might as well. As you can see, this top nut on this got stripped out, so we had to cut this off and weld another one on there. That was a pretty fun time. Yeah, this bad boy needs some cleaning. Okay, so I just got my front cover on, and if you don't know how these work, there's a gasket on both sides. I did run some RTV around kind of the whereabouts around the gasket. Last time I used Motorcraft, this time I'm just using this ultra black. Still pretty good stuff. This stuff is probably like the best of the best stuff, but in this case, I don't think it really matters. I've seen people use blue RTV, orange RTV. Plus, these gaskets already have RTV in them. So my little outline is more or less just insurance. And all these side bolts here, they're all for the water pump, so I'm not gonna do them yet. I'm gonna work on the rear main next, so then I can get my oil pan on. Okay, so I know all this is probably gonna seem like against the rules to a lot of you, but I just put this rear main in like 100 miles ago, maybe. Pulled my transmission, changed the rear main, hoping it would fix my leaks, and it didn't fix jack you know what. So I'm just gonna keep this one in here. It didn't leak before. There's no reason for it to leak. This is the gasket for the rear main. Once again, I'm gonna just kind of RTV around the outside of it. Okay, so now I have the oil pan on and I'm working on the injector rails. So I pretty much got everything cleaned up here. If anybody's wondering how I ran these, this is gonna be the passenger side, and I have it all blocked off except for this one in the middle, which comes over to the other side. Now this is the front, which goes to the top of the injection pump, and then this is the main return. So now there are several ways to do this, but personally, I think the easiest way to do them is put them individually into the rails and then tighten them all on there one by one. This keeps them even, and then there's less of a chance of tearing O-rings, which seems to be the main problem with people who buy these rails if the rails don't work. I'm gonna reuse most of these O-rings because, like before, there's only like 1,000 miles on this engine in the first place since the last rebuild. And I have new injector O-rings. I actually have like 2 or 3 sets, so I will use a couple, but I'm not gonna replace them all. These are the ones from Falpro. Pretty sure they changed suppliers because I think they used to be brown. These were all the ones from Justin. Obviously, this is the one I need to replace. The O-ring had a couple nicks in it, so I cut them off. Okay, so in front of me, I got both rails and all the injectors. Now, basically for these O-rings, you can use just about any good lubricant. I'm gonna use Assembly Lube because I have a lot of it. You could also use something like this tube of lithium grease or really any other tube of grease. As long as they're well lubricated, you're not gonna have a problem. Okay, so forgive me for this little camera setup. I'm not very good at doing this, and most of the time, all the time, I'm doing this by myself. So then you're gonna wanna go ahead and take it and put it up in here, and it should kind of snap in there. Not really snap, but it'll pop in there. Now, of course, the more dangerous part of this is the fact that you have to tighten these injectors in the rail. So you have to make sure these are well lubricated, or you'll tear the injector rings while you're tightening it down. So anyway, I'm gonna do the rest of these now. All right, so I got both rails here. Like I said, they're both lubed up pretty good. Now I'm gonna tighten them down the line, back and forth, over and over again. And do the best I can to keep it even and flat. Now I just tightened this one from the outside, but if you do it from the inside, you have less of a chance of getting this wrench up under the return rail and pushing up on it. All right, so I got them all tightened down. And like I said, as far as how I plumb this, I got this whole side going to the middle, which runs across to the middle of this side. This goes to the injection pump return, and then it all goes out the back. Yeah, I thought it was hot out there. Anyway, My valley pan is here, so I'll rip it out and put it on. I'm not so sure why they had to put it in a box inside of a box. They charged me 30 bucks for shipping, but really glad these are 160 bucks, but what can you do, I guess? Now they say anytime you're turbo, you should probably drill some holes through this drain here. For anybody who doesn't know, that big hole is where my oil drain for my turbo will go. Okay, so this is my turbo oil drain from Justin. This needs to be JB welded onto the valley pan. It'll sit on here like this. It seals up just fine. You just need to kind of get some JB weld on there to hold it and seal it in place. All right, so now I got the turbo drain in there, and I will now RTV this guy down, and then I'll put the intake manifold on top. This is one of those things that just makes the build look a lot prettier. No more big hole. Obviously, this is all TIG welded. Like I said, this is from R&D. It's for, basically helps for his intercooled setups. All right, now on this intake manifold, I also have 3 little engine hoist holes to put on there. Normally, I think they have 2, but I'm pretty sure I stole one off of my other engine. Anyway, okay, so I got the intake manifold on. Now, I'm going to try to do these next steps carefully because if I get it out of whack, it kind of gets tough to put some stuff on here. I think next I need to put on this oil pressure sender and then the T4 stand for the turbo. Okay, so another day later, I got this valve cover cleaned up good enough for some paint. I might clean off the inside a little more, but in the meantime, I'm going to hit this with some epoxy and then I'll paint it black. So I went ahead and started painting this one. I just have some self-etching epoxy primer and then I put this engine enamel over top of it. Last time I clear coated everything. I don't think I'm going to do that. This is a valve cover that was on the passenger side. I'm getting it cleaned up to repaint it just because it was kind of messy. This one's definitely harder to clean up, but that's because I had primer and then paint and then clear coat on top of it. So it was pretty thick stuff. Unfortunately, I ran out of carburetor cleaner. Okay, so I got the driver's side valve cover on. This is the one that I cleaned up and painted. This was the same one that was on the passenger side, and now it's going back on. I just repainted it. I threw a little paint on the oil pan. I've got this gear on here where it needs to be. You want to make sure the Y is matched up where it's supposed to be because you do not want to be off a tooth. I also was missing a plug, so I put that plug in right there. I'm trying to get my oil pressure and my turbo fill feed line matched up. But for the moment, I can't find my feed line, so. All right, so I got my water pump on. When you're doing this, there's 4 bolts that need RTV, the top 2 and the bottom 2. Be careful not to over torque these because you can't snap these nuts off. I did it myself. This nut's stripped off, and so I had to pull this cover and weld a new nut in there. This water pump, all these bolts are torqued to 14 foot-pounds. Okay, so when it comes to running my oil feed line and stuff, I found my turbo line, by the way. This is how I do it. Now, this T comes with Justin's hot side kit along with his oil feed line and this elbow. This is here from factory. It's normally where the oil pressure switch goes. This is an oil pressure sender out of either a 7.3 Power Stroke or a 6.9, I don't remember. But regardless of that, I just tee off for this oil pressure, and then this is my turbo line, which would go right up here. Right now, I'm waiting for this to dry, and I still need another coat of paint on here. But once this is done, I can get the injection pump stuff all on there. I can get this on there, and then I can put my dipstick in along with my glow plug stand and stuff. And once that stuff is on, I can get my turbo stuff set on. And then with that, I can put my exhaust manifolds on. Along with all that stuff, I still need to get my oil cooler on here. And then I can get like my engine mounts and stuff. While I'm sitting here waiting, I'm going to put these glow plugs back in. These are the Motorcraft CD29 glow plugs, I should say. You can get these at O'Reilly's or anywhere else. I think they're 13 bucks a piece or something. I got them from Roger Sost, who is IDI Diesel, makes the battery cables and whatnot. I believe they're a 3/8 head. Yes, they are. Because my block was so dry, I am going to go ahead and throw a little anti-seize on these before I put them in there. My hope is these last in there and this engine lasts for however long, so I'll just put a little anti-seize on them, all of them. Don't forget that a little tiny bit of anti-seize goes a long way. Okay, so these are the exhaust manifolds that go with Justin's hot side kit. These are just studs that go in here, and then obviously the manifolds go on, and it's got stainless steel nuts. And honestly, I've heard it both ways, but I'm going to use this manifold gasket because I have one. Now, you're going to want to make sure that when you do this, you don't round off these stainless nuts. So I would use it I would use a good quality 9/16 wrench because otherwise these will round off. Also, it's easier to get these nuts on if you loosen these back down first. I just tightened them up because I was being stupid. I was hoping to use my dad's snap-on 9/16, but I can't find it. So hopefully this Tecton 9/16 works. It's normally just the cheap starter wrenches. But at the bottom here, if they're too round, not square enough, it's easier to get them on a nut, but it's also easier to ruin nuts with them. Obviously, these outside ones, you can just use a closed end. And you can use a closed end on a couple of these ones, but not very many. These have been, I've reused these. Obviously, they've been installed before, so I put the worst nuts on the outside so I didn't damage them anymore. So obviously, when you're tightening these down and you have this gasket in here, you're going to have to tighten them back and forth 4 or 5 times, because the more you tighten one, the more the next loosens up, because it crunches that gasket up. I think I got it pretty well done now. Didn't do any damage to any of the bolts. This driver manifold is also where I have my EGT probe drilled in, tapped. It's right in the second cylinder on the driver's side, which I guess is cylinder 4. Okay, so I was kind of like making a completely separate video for the oil cooler install and rebuild and stuff, but I kind of gave up on that because I didn't end up filming any of the pressing on. This has rust repair gaskets, and the huge O-rings are from Russ. We just ended up using a jack and jacking right onto on the frame here and pushing it on that way. We have a press right over there, but it's kind of dinky. And okay, my oil cooler is on. Okay, so I'm about to put this top timing cover on, and when you do it, you want to make sure that the injection pump gear is lined up with the camshaft gear, unless you don't want your pickup to run. Now, I have this gear marked white. My camshaft gear down in there is marked white, and then I can see the Y up here that fits in between it. All right, I got the valve cover on along with the glow plug bracket and this dipstick tube. Now I'll get my exhaust manifold and my dipstick put in at the same time. All right, so here we have the oil dipstick. Obviously, I got the hot side somewhat on there. You have to slip this through here, and then obviously it's got to go down in the hole. But before you do that, you need either an O-ring or RTV. I have the O-ring, but I'm just going to use the RTV. Okay, so maybe I should have waited on that, but I think I can get it done anyway. I got the dipstick clamped up where it's supposed to be. Okay, I was being stupid. You got to have this dipstick out to get that tightened on. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so now I got the pump going on. A lot of people have trouble getting these on. I immediately do the front and then the back one, and then the middle two kind of fall into place. I know a lot of people have trouble with cross-threading these and stuff, and it can be a pain, but there are some ways to make it easier on yourself. Okay, let's get the turbo on. All right, here we have the T4, T3 pedestal. So I jumped the gun a little bit and put the turbo on. Then I had to take it back off because it's a lot easier to tighten all these guys with it off. So the pedestal is tight on here now, and now I get the turbo back on. Okay, so the turbo's on. It's all tightened down, everything. I got the feed line on. Now I guess I can go for the up pipes. So as far as these up pipes go, they just pop into place up here, and then you tighten them down to this V-band onto the exhaust manifold down here. Now, as far as these up pipes go, they just slide in up here, and down here they pop into this V-band that you tighten down between the exhaust manifold and the up pipe. Both sides are this way. They're a little different on either side, but they're pretty dang close. And this is by far the best system on the IDI. Like I've previously said, this is all part of R&D Justin Anderson's hot side kit. These exhaust manifolds, the up pipes, the turbo pedestal, and then I also got this turbo from Justin. This is an S261 SXE. It's kind of an experimental turbo for him. Normally he runs an S257 on the Stage 1 kit. This is by far my favorite kit on the market. It's the most customizable with it being a T3, T4 turbo pedestal. I have a factory turbo over there in that box, and I guarantee you I'd take this one 10 times out of 10. Okay, so I got the pickup outside and I just pressure washed the inside of the engine compartment all off. Got the frame clean and everything. Still doing a bit of little stuff to this. I got to put my fuel block off plate on. I just put my balancer on. Not quite sure if I'm going to put the harness on now or later. I kind of want to clean this up because it's pretty stinking ugly. And I apologize for the darkness. Our power's been out for like 2 hours. Getting ready to put the engine back into the pickup. Probably not going to record it, but as far as how I do this, I put the motor mounts in, and then I set the engine down, and then I bolt the engine to the motor mounts. With this setup, it's just easier that way. So as I get closer to getting this engine in, I'm kind of just doing a bunch of little stuff here. I'm kind of got part of my wiring harness on here. I got a new high idle switch and the coolant sensor. That's all one piece. I had to get another one from eBay. Then I got these on here for the injection pump. I got my oil pressure sender on because those are just a pain in the butt to get to. I still would really like to clean up this harness because this is obviously a mess. Maybe I'll run some loom over it. I don't really know what to do, but it's bad. But really, this thing's ready to go back in the pickup. I'm just waiting for my dad to be around so he can help me do it. All right, surprise, we got it. It is in the pickup. Now, the way I did this is I just stuck these motor mounts loosely into the frame, and then I dropped the engine down onto them. So now I've got to tighten up these bolts here, and then I'll have to tighten up the motor mounts on the bottom also. I know a lot of people just keep the motor mount on the engine, but the way this turbo and stuff is, it's just easier to do it without them. You have less chance of ruining the threads or any of that kind of whack stuff too. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. All right, so I'm gonna attempt to get this flywheel up in here by myself with the transmission right there. I think I can do it. I don't want to end up eating this and ruining all my teeth, but I guess we'll figure it out. Okay, so it is the morning of the 4th. I just got my flywheel put up here. I was able to do it with this transmission sitting here. I just kind of had to cock myself up there and stick a punch in it to get it in the threads and hold it there while I could get a couple bolts in it. So anyway, I'm getting these last couple bolts in, putting some just medium blue thread locker on them. They're torqued to 47 foot-pounds. All right, so I got them all torqued down. I would say I should have done this before I put the engine in, and that would probably have been the brighter decision, but I got it in anyway. Now it's time for the clutch. So this is like a South Bend stage 2 clutch or something. It's good for like 350 or 400 horse and 800 or 900 pound-feet of torque, I want to say. I don't know. It's been a while since I bought it. All right, so just got this oil filter on here. This is like a luber finer or something. Not the biggest, not the best quality, but I don't care. This is gonna run for a very short time. It's gonna be like 2 starts, and then I'll change it. All right, so I apologize for the loud buzzing in the background. I've got a V-bore zapper thing back there. Anyway, I'm trying to start putting this front back together. This is the regular fuel filter plate that would come up to here. I cut it off at the bottom and ground it off because you kind of still need this piece on here. Anyway, the vacuum pump will go on there, and then the alternator goes up top. All right, so I'm making some progress here. I got my air conditioner back on as well as my power steering pump. There is this back bracket on here, and then this fits in between the back bracket and this front, and then the air conditioner kind of sits over top of it. It's kind of a real mess to get in there. I had it all as one piece other than the power steering pump, which if you leave this loose, you can slip in between right there and right here. It makes it a little easier. For the most part, these are all 9/16 headed bolts. All right, so I've got my alternator on here, and I think the vacuum pump is already on. I don't remember, but I'm still trying to figure out where that piece is for the alternator bracket. Half it bolts onto here, and the other half bolts on down here, so I've got to find that one still. Here we are. Okay, so now all the noise is done in here. So anyway, I got everything back on. I've got this piece and the other half of the alternator bracket over in the water zapper thing, kind of just to clean it all up and whatnot. Next step is probably going to be getting the transmission on. I got to wait for my dad because I can't do all that on my own. So, all right, last time we got the transmission up and under here, really did fight it. I ended up having to bring it back down a couple times, drain the fluid out of it, had to put it in gear because I had left it in neutral. We were dang close to pulling the transfer case off, but it ended up going in fine. So I got the bottom half of the bracket. I still need to put these side mounts on, but I think I'm going to route my exhaust from the downpipe to here first. In the meantime, I think I'm going to, I'm trying to match these belts up, but they're all really similar, and it's kind of confusing the crap out of me. I've got all these right here. These were the 4 that were on there, I believe. Obviously, this is the vacuum pump. But then next longest should be the air conditioner, and these are all within like 2 inches long of each other. So not sure how I got that one on there before. I also am going to be cranking it up soon. Probably not starting it, but just cranking it, trying to run some oil through everything, make sure there's oil pressure. All right, so I just cranked on a little bit. Obviously, I've kind of got a temporary setup here. I got all the V-belts on. The batteries are in for now. I think I'm going to throw this core support back in here. I can't really crank this thing much because my air conditioner is still full of oil and it's spitting oil everywhere. So I think I'm just going to throw the front back together, at least the core support. Just did a little cleanup to this. I think I'm going to retire for the night. All right, so after a little cleaning, I got the core support back in. Now I'm just kind of working on getting this whole thing mounted up. I got my stacks underneath that I think I need. I'm not going to worry about leveling things out because I've never had any problems with what I had. So I'm getting these sides on, and then I'll get this piece on. All right, I got the support in, at least for the most part, because some of these, like, you need the headlights on for and everything. So I'm going to bolt everything up at the end. I just want to kind of, get as much on there as it needs to be sound. Well, I'm in the middle of trying to get a first start here, and I was having a little trouble with this relay for my e-fuel. As long as I jumper the main hot wire there and then connect this one to power, the relay clicks and the fuel comes on. So I guess this means that the hot wire or the key on power wire that I had this to is not the right one. All right, the fuel pump is on and running now, so I guess it's time. So after that little bit of cranking, I just wanted to make sure I got 12 volts here. Don't zap me. Anyway, if you ever have your injection pump and you're not getting any fuel to your injectors, it's very likely it's because you're not getting 12 volts to the fuel shutoff solenoid. And if you hear it click, like mine just did, that means you're getting power there. So, all right, I'm just trying to get some air out of those fuel lines there. Okay, so it turns out it helps if you hook your return line up, because all my fuel was dumping on the ground. But anyway, all right, so I had to bleed my inlet into the injection pump from the e-fuel, and now I got some fuel there to the injection pump at least. I still have a couple lines cracked. Well, I think that pretty much concludes the YouTube video. I may make another one of kind of the whole front and how that goes back together, because a lot of people are interested in the intercooler stuff and everything. But we made it from bare block to running. So anyway, thanks for watching. I apologize I didn't catch every second of footage the entire time. I kind of jumped around and skipped things, and sometimes I forgot, and my dad was helping me and I don't want to bother him with recording and everything. And most of the time I was doing it by myself. So, not most of the time, I did all the recording by myself. So anyway, we'll get this back on the road soon.
I'm headed down to Nashville looking for the country blues.